First Girl.
I'm Josh Knight the First.
So we have already talked about the spoiler-free discussion on Power Rangers in another video. If you're over here, this is where the spoiler discussion is, so if you have not already seen the movie and don't want spoilers, then please do not watch this one, watch the other one first instead, or if you have already seen it, or if you don't care about spoilers, this is the place to be.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. First and foremost, I said this on Twitter already, I'll repeat it here. This was the most expensive ad for Krispy Kreme I have ever seen in my lifetime.
There was another reviewer who had said, I want to talk about Krispy Kreme, but I can't talk about it all that much in this video because that would spoil a whole bunch. Like, that's how much presence Krispy Kreme has in this film.
Like
that talking about Krispy Kreme spoils
yeah,
the
because
movie.
it's one thing to realize that Krispy Kreme is doing a tie-in right now to the movie. You know, you go there right now and you get, you know, Power Rangers themed donuts. Krispy Kreme is plot relevant in this movie, and I guess we'll touch on that more specifically in a few minutes. But just getting into the overall feel of the movie, we kind of said this over in the spoiler-free review. We'll repeat it here. The movie divides up like a weird mix of Final Fantasy 15 and the first Iron Man movie, where, surprisingly enough, the camaraderie between the 5 characters, the 5 new Rangers, is surprisingly believable. They do a good job of making you believe that these people who didn't really know each other come together and form a bond of friendship.
I don't feel like that was what our Power Rangers of 1993 was, but I feel like these are characters that, yes, they have done what they're saying they're doing in this movie, and I believe them. Yes. I guess that's okay.
Right, but by that same token, like I said, making the comparison to Iron Man, the first one that came out, you spend so much of the movie building up the characters, and then when you come into the part where you actually came in for, which is the suit fighting, it's so little of the movie at the tail end that it's like, why, like, you showed me all of this in the commercials.
It's so minuscule. You can almost count the number of hits that anybody lands on these putties.
Because, like, we'll say straight up.
And all the fighting is all with putties, mind you. That's it.
We'll say this right now. If you've watched the second trailer that came out, and at least 3 of the TV commercials, you have pretty much seen 90% of the Power Rangers in this movie. Like, that's it. That's as much as there is. If you're expecting more going into this, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, you're going to be really disappointed with the Power Rangers part of this Power Rangers movie. That's what I wanted to see.
I called it... I hate being right about this. I called it way back when we first started seeing trailers and started getting news about this. The fighting as Power Rangers with the 5 characters only happens at the end of the movie, maybe the last 10 minutes.
Right.
Maybe. It might have been even less than that. The fighting as a group, as Rangers, takes about a minute and a half, and that is all you get. The scene that you see of them jumping out of the water and then fighting the putties, it's maybe a couple of seconds longer than that, and it's done.
Right.
There is no other Power Ranger fighting in this movie. And then they immediately get into their Zords and tackle Goldar. And as such, most of that fight you see in the commercials, and that feels incredibly disappointing. In that sense, yeah, I don't think I got my money's worth.
So, furthermore, all I ever wanted to see was a real transformation sequence, which, by the way, you pretty much see all of in trailers and commercials also.
Yeah, because that's all it is.
Because they just cut it. We don't see a full body here. They fully become these Power Rangers. There is no morpher. Any toy you see in the toy aisle at Walmart or Target is a lie.
Yes, any role-play item.
Yeah, no role-play item is real, except for one color of one of the swords.
Right, which we figured out early on that Jason, the Red Ranger, he's the only one who gets a sword. They may be selling multicolored variants of that at your local Walmart or Target. Those do not show up in the movie. The Rangers do not have their own individual weapons.
I wanted to hear a roll call. There was no roll call.
There was no roll call.
Nobody ever calls out any animal at any point in time, not even to call forth the Zords. There is no calling of the Zords.
The Zords just are in a cave, which you can see in a clip that they've already released online.
They just get in them, and you don't even see them get in them. They're just suddenly in them.
Yeah.
And so no one ever identifies that as a mastodon, that as a pterodactyl, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's because Alpha's like, this is what was alive during the time of that we came 65 million years ago, and not all of those animals were around 65 million years ago.
Which
and
other
like,
people have discussed in
but I'm
points.
like, the reason I bring that up though is like maybe they're trying to skirt it and not honestly say out loud that we've got mammals on this team.
Exactly.
Maybe that's them trying to avoid it really hard. And that's the other thing. I feel like they're really embarrassed by the Power Rangers part of this movie. I feel like that's why it's such a small portion, and they try and stay away from the really goofy stuff. But I can't stress this enough, and I've said this in other outlets too. I would have paid top dollar for a movie that fully embraced just how goofy Super Sentai and Power Rangers actually are.
Well, because
some people will be like, Super Sentai is way more like violent and serious. No, it's not. And Power Rangers, no, we serious it the hell up. No, we don't. They're both made for children.
Yeah.
They're both made for children.
And the thing about it is, this movie wasn't made for children necessarily. It was made for those fans that have been clamoring for years. We want our dark, gritty reboot. This is that movie. This is exactly what you got. I hope you're happy.
So you get joking about somebody jacking off a bull.
It wasn't Jason.
Thank God it wasn't. He's in the scene, but it wasn't Jason.
But he didn't do it.
We have revenge porn.
Kimberly put out revenge porn. That's why she's in detention.
And like, these are people who the only one I felt like actually deserved to be a Power Ranger was Billy.
Now, admittedly, this is something that I have kind of mixed feelings about. We talked about this outside the theater. There's been much made about the additions as far as character development to two characters in specific, Trini and Billy, and we'll go ahead and talk about that here for a second. They did release that information earlier in the week that Billy exists somewhere on the autism spectrum, which they do directly reference there in the movie.
He just says, I'm on the spectrum, but we know what that means.
Yes, and you know, he's describing how he doesn't get certain things, and he processes things a little bit differently. And I do think, for what it's worth, R.J. Cyler did a very good job of depicting that early on in the movie. And I say early on...
And still being a fantastic person.
Yes.
And putting a good face to what autism can look like.
Yes, and, you know, something like that does need to be seen. I do agree with that. That having been said, the second they get to the ship, because it's not the command center, they never say those words. Once they get to the ship and meet Alpha and Zordon, those characteristics that he's showing quite well melt away.
Now,
and that could be something said about, you know, the power of friendship and how that's helping him feel more relaxed.
I was gonna say, I feel like maybe, isn't it something to be said that he found where he's comfortable, maybe?
Maybe that's what they were getting at. I just kind of wish that there were still some things that carry over, that he might not still be the most perfect Ranger. It's just, it kind of felt like all the character ticks dropped. So
I don't know.
That's just the way I took it.
I'm not as upset about that personally. I think that it's entirely possible that he found a place where he was comfortable.
Perhaps.
And
mind you, that's just my interpretation.
My concern again is, you know, for a second, Kimberly says that she actually legitimately feels bad about having sent somebody revenge porn of somebody else.
Yeah.
And Jason's response is like, you did a bad thing, it doesn't make you a bad person, just live with it. I feel like that wasn't maybe the best way of addressing it. Maybe say, well, tell her you're sorry. Maybe saying sorry would be a good start. And then the girls that get the rocks dropped on them from being shot at, the putties that got shot at by Kimberly, and then the rocks fall on the car. Are those the two girls?
Those are the same two girls.
And Kimberly says, serves you right, but those are the people she hurt
before
the beginning of the movie. So she's still being a terrible person to those people that she maybe for a second felt guilty about hurting their feelings. But
like I get how
I don't feel like these are people to be to aspire to.
Yeah.
To be.
The thing about that is that, as far as that goes, as far as character development, I do think the two female characters, specifically Trini and Kimberly, are the least developed as far as the movie goes, because they do
Trini especially.
Trini I wonder about because of the way they depicted her character and her home life. Now, Trini, of course, is the other character that everybody's been going on about as being the first openly I guess you'd say, LGBTQ character in Power Rangers.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying she's gay, but at the same time, you can't confirm exactly who she likes,
And
other than her confirming that she's attracted to women to an extent.
the most she says is that she's still figuring stuff out, and that she can't talk to her parents about this, but she's opening up to the other Rangers, which is fine in and of itself. But the thing about it is, that's a one-off sentence or two said midway through the movie, and then it never gets brought up again.
It's a little tell, don't show. I feel like I wish they had championed it a little bit harder. Show why it's so difficult for her to talk about, or for her to address in any way. I feel like that would have made it a lot more solid and really bring it home, that idea home, and
right.
So they were close, but I don't feel like they actually solidified it.
In that sense, maybe they kind of pulled their punches a little bit.
Maybe that might have been. I'm now granted. Otherwise, like if these faces were not attached to Power Rangers, I wouldn't care whether or not they were bad people, because I feel like a story about bad people coming together and becoming friends, and then maybe becoming better people in general, would have been a good story.
Which is what I think they were trying to do, but it falls short.
I do feel like it falls a little bit short of doing that, because I feel like what makes them so great is that they found coins. Not because they deserve. That's another thing. When we're going back to source material, these people were specifically chosen. Now
by Zordon.
Zordon in combination with Alpha.
Right.
Now, they say, well, the power coins, the crystals, they're never wrong, I guess, and Zordon just sort of relegates, well, if they found them, it must be them, I guess. And I just kind of don't feel like, I still have this feeling in my gut like, nah, they were just the first people who stumbled across them. It's not like they were chosen. I really don't get this feeling like, no, you have definitely been selected for this very important task because you're the right people for the job. It still feels like they're the wrong people for the job. I feel we're probably going to be those people on the internet who are the people who were the old school fans, and we're going to get accused of, well, you're the old fans that just can't accept that this is a new version and it's a reboot for a reason, blah de blah. Well, I say certain things like, I felt like the original Power Rangers were people to aspire to.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
And were they really realistic? No, they weren't. However, I feel like you could have made them realistic while still giving them things about each individual that made me think, I want to aspire to be like that. I want to aspire to be like that. And I didn't see that in anybody but Billy in this movie.
I think to a certain extent, to give a little bit more credit to the characters there that they developed, again, that's the thing I bring up there, Billy is absolutely the heart of the movie, I believe.
Yeah,
Billy is the heart of the movie. Next to that is Jason, who is somewhat relegated to the leadership role by Zordon, but admittedly, arguing against source material here, a lot of the time, Zordon kind of has this attitude about him that, well, I'm making do with you five because I have to, not because I actually believe that you're the Power Rangers, even though you're Power Rangers on paper, so to speak. And then, you do see Jason kind of take on that leadership role, which is something I was worried about going into it, and admittedly, they did develop that in his character. The other one, of course, would be Zoc, only because he, I think, has the most well-developed home life shown there on screen.
Well, and that and showing that there's perhaps a reason for him being a bit of a delinquent, not showing up at school.
Yeah.
Because he's got a home life that he's worried about, then you realize, there's something good in him. I wish we could have developed that a little more too. I wish we could have developed that in everybody, because otherwise I don't see a good streak throughout everybody that is something that, like, you look at that person and go, I want to be just like that person.
Well,
not just some cool colored character in a costume, but the person. Why do I want to be that person? I do not feel like this movie did that going into the Power Rangers portion of the movie.
Well, because you look at it, and I really do tie it back to the developed home life that they show, because they flesh out Jason's story. You know, he had chances to get football scholarships and threw it away because he actually did something semi-noble. He was doing a prank, but took all the blame and let everybody else go. So that is something I can kind of see.
But I don't know,
there.
he still did the prank, and apparently he keeps doing stupid crap. Apparently he's done all kinds of other stupid crap before that. So, you know, I don't see a particularly noble person. I really don't.
I can at least see the trying to look out for others. That he had a semblance of understanding how a team works. I wish they kind of mentioned it a little bit more with the football, weirdly enough. But you do see it there that he protected the other people. Same thing with Zach. We see what he's like at home. Billy, most of it is told from his...
Man, did he ever get in trouble for the van?
I don't know that he did.
Nobody ever addressed it.
We'll come back to that. But Billy does tell you quite a bit because of his character and the way he comes off at the beginning of the movie. He tells you most everything, but because of the nature of who his character is, you buy into it. So that's fine. Kimberly, we see the backs of her dad's head in a parking lot once, and then we never hear about her home life ever again. She says how much she hates it, you know, being there in Angel Grove, but it's show don't tell.
Yeah.
And then with Trini, I don't know if you got the same vibe. Trini's mom came off as very abusive sounding.
Well, I mean, maybe that's why she feels like she can't talk to anybody.
Yeah,
about
I guess, but it was like, no, like, we should call a number for her, because this isn't cool.
Yeah.
Like, she just had a urine test cup at the ready. Like, what's up with that? Like, you know, you guys have seen it there in the commercials and the trailers, but she comes off like she has this angry outburst at her.
Yeah.
Like, and knowing what that looks like, it resonated with me. Like, no, like, you guys need to develop that a little bit more, because just showing that one thing ain't cool.
Yeah.
As far as my concern for that character. So I guess good job for making me concerned for that character, but then that answer never gets developed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so that having been said, that's the Rangers. As far as developing the plot of the movie, in some ways, it feels like them getting together, you know, being in the same place at the same time, and then getting finally to the ship where Zordon is, does feel a lot like Chronicle, except you don't have to worry about, you know, the cameras everywhere, and it's a little bit more fleshed out in places. However, effects-wise, the jumps across the canyon, you can't not see where the wires are, and the people just don't know how to flail in midair.
People just, every time I see
Believably,
a wire,
believably.
Every time I see wire jumps, I know they're wire jumps because people throw in extra running midair kicks, and I hate that. I hate seeing that. It doesn't look realistic. It looks like somebody who wants to pretend that they're walking on air.
Right, whereas... something, just kind of juxtaposing it here, some of the behind-the-scenes footage that we're seeing for Justice League, watching the way Batman jumps and descends with the grapnel hook, looks more natural.
Grappling hook?
Grappling or grapnel, both are interchangeable. Okay. Looks more natural because you're not doing all that extra movement that would slow down your momentum. Like, yeah, you want to say they're super powered now, which wasn't a thing in the original, but whatever, you know, we'll get past that for just the sake of that. But you're not going to be stupid and slow down your momentum. Like, you're breaking the laws of physics, but the laws are still there. So if you want to work with the audiences having to suspend disbelief, then somebody in Hollywood work on that, please. Yeah. That having been said, once they actually get to the command center and we're introduced to Alpha, Alpha's fine. I was okay with him. Yeah. I didn't have any major complaints. Out of any character who has to say a line from the original series, the way Bill Hader emulates that, he's having to basically, he's been given the trainee role, or trainer role, I should say, in training the Rangers and fighting these, you know, hologram putties. Every time he sees them fail, he gives his eyes like, oh my god, like, ay.
And it's only a set of 3 and not a set of 5.
Like, he's not overdoing it like in the original series.
And he only says it twice, so...
And as far as an adaptation goes, that's fine. It's a callback without being forced.
No, it fit where it needed to be, which is not the same thing that I can say for Make My Monster Grow.
Right, which was the next thing I'm going to bring up. When Rita does, I guess you'd say resurrects Goldar, she utters the line, "Make my monster grow."
But he's already, as she's doing that, he's already really big. While
he's up to his waist.
Yeah, so he's already huge, and he was never small to begin with. Like, she never made a small version of Goldar first, and then made him grow. So there was literally no reason for her to say that.
On top of that, like, we'll talk about Rita here for a second. So Rita, when she comes back, a fishing boat finds her, which happens to belong to Jason's dad here in the movie. But she unceremoniously comes back, like they just found her and she woke up, and then she killed some guy.
And why did she wake up? That's not really explained. Now, granted, I can come to a logical conclusion and say, hey, these 5 kids found the other power coins, so now they've all, like, activated or something, and so you kind of make a guess, but that is me having to make a guess.
For the movie.
And the movie doesn't actually expressly say that that's why she wakes up.
And as if it was any sort of surprise, yes, Rita was the 6th Ranger. They do have a prologue there at the beginning of the movie showing Rita in full green costume. Mm-hmm. So they do already have a suit for her version. That having been said, talking about, references back to the original series, the big plot point of the movie is actually the Zoc Crystal, which is referenced in Season 3, mm-hmm. and then, of course, becomes the source of their power for Power Rangers Zeo. In this version, they've got, they say 5 portions of the Zoc Crystal on different planets, where, they have to be protected, otherwise they'll destroy the whole planet. I don't believe that was the case in Season 3 when they had to go look for them, around Zeo Quest, but the whole point is if Rita gets her hands on the Zoc Crystal, then the Earth goes boom. That wasn't the case in the original. They turned it into a MacGuffin here. Mm-hmm. And I don't really appreciate that.
Yeah, I can understand what you mean. Also, at least by looking at that map where it would appear that the Zoc Crystal is, at least it seems like Angel Grove is in fact still in California, even though it looks like it's in Iowa. So...
Well, yeah, it's probably way, way North California now.
No, Southern California.
But that doesn't look like Southern
California.
California.
No, we've been to Southern California. I was born in Southern California. That didn't look like Southern California. Okay, that's whatever. Fine, cool.
Okay, tell me what you want.
So, hey, how about that Power Rangers theme?
Okay, so, for any of you who know me and have heard me talk about some Power Rangers stuff, there's things that I absolutely love about the original series. There's things that I like about the 95 movie. One of the things I don't like was their rendition of the theme Go-Go Power Rangers, which a lot of people seem to think is the only version of the song as opposed to the television theme song that you heard for several years.
Right.
When the Power Rangers finally have transformed and defeated some putties and finally get in their Zords to go to downtown Angel Grove and tackle Goldar, they play the 95 movie version of Go-Go Power Rangers as they're, running across the desert there, in between the mountains in Angel Grove.
Which is only the chorus. They only play the chorus and then they cut it immediately.
And it felt a lot, not a lot. Some people in the audience cheered.
Because that's all people wanted to hear,
but
and so that's the pandering. Yeah.
It was very pandering because, one, you didn't play the original theme, you played the movie theme. Like, you didn't even call it back all the way, which, personal opinion, I think the original version there sounds much more superior, but...
Well, it's the original, and I don't know if I would say superior is correct.
I never felt that we earned it, because like we said, going into it, the morphing sequence is exactly what you see in the commercials. There's some real tight close-ups of them looking at their fists as the armor kind of covers them, but that's as much as you get. It's not a clear-cut sequence. Jason very, sullenly, it's morphin' time. Like, there's no oomph to it.
He says it because he's supposed to say it. But what they were supposed to say, too, is their roll call, and they didn't say that.
Because the thing about it is, kind of like we were saying, there's no morphers. They sell morphers at the toy stores. They do not use morphers. They kind of have to be united as one in spirit while standing around what may be the viewing globe there on the ship, mm-hmm. and then they kind of have to just focus real hard, and then the armor shows up. Except for the one time Billy does it instantaneously earlier in the movie, but they never explain what it was that made him transform.
Well, I mean, it seemed pretty clear to me that he was really focused on his teammates in that moment.
Right, but they never outright say it, and Billy never comes to that conclusion on his own, which, would have been helpful to the audience, but it felt like a dropped thread.
Yeah, I see.
As far as that goes. But yeah, once that happens, you're missing the pageantry of what makes Power Rangers Power Rangers. The fact
I
that
wanted some Monster of the Week stuff. I wanted more hand-to-hand combat. I wanted them working as a team on the ground. I wanted them actually using weapons. I wanted them combining weapons. I wanted all of those things, and you could have done that if paced better throughout the course of the movie, and they didn't do it.
no, because they fight. They're on the same battlefield, but they're fighting as individuals.
Yeah.
And they only do it for maybe 2 minutes max, and that might be very generous. It felt more like a minute and a half. And then that was it. They jump into their Zords, and then they go into downtown Angel
Zords
Grove.
that don't even natively combine with one another.
Yeah, that was the other big thing. So once they go to downtown Angel Grove and they're fighting Goldar, they get to a point where they're just lined up in front of him shooting lasers at him, and then they get pushed back into a fire pit.
Which is where the Zoc Crystal is.
And they never quite explain what happened next. All you know
you
is...
did see some green light come up, which is what...
No, you see a lot of flames.
Well, you saw a combination of these two things. You saw flames, and you saw some green light up, which is where the Zoc Crystal was, and the Zoc Crystal is green. And so your only conclusion, then, is that the Zoc Crystal helped them combine.
Because for anybody who can call back to the original episode, Day of the Dumpster, there, when Zordon is explaining what the Power Rangers are and what their individual powers are and what the Zords can do, he tells them right off the bat, you'll have these powerful battle Zords that can combine into the more powerful Megazord. Like, he tells them what it can do. That way, once they actually get into the fight with Goldar and Day of the Dumpster, they are aware that it can do that. Whereas here, Zordon never tells them they could combine, which basically tells me they couldn't. And then when they do combine, it's a surprise. Rita looks up at them and she's like, what the hell is that? I've never seen that before. And then Billy has to be the one to name it the Megazord.
Yeah.
So, that's taken away from it as well. And then admittedly, they've changed it up to where it's more, one person's controlling an arm, one person's controlling a leg, this, that, and the other. You do get swords, which are just the pterodactyl wings, but you don't get...
And they do one stab.
They do one stab at Goldar when he's on the ground. They suplex him, which is, take that as you will. But the fight is very lackluster. You can at least see what's happening, and the CG doesn't look nearly as bad as it did in 95 with the Ninja Megazord.
Right, of course.
That having been said, the fight is very boring. And it only lasts for so long, and they defeat Rita without very much... Like, once they got into the Megazord, and I guess that's one thing calling back to the series, it wasn't really much of a problem.
No, it really wasn't. And now Rita's headed off to the moon. She hasn't
because
hit
the way
the
that
moon
works,
yet. She got smacked, backhanded into outer space.
The Megazord backhanded Rita into space. She's blasting off again.
Yeah.
And we were there when it happened, because it's a callback to a joke at the beginning of the movie. And when it happens, we're thinking to ourselves, no, this isn't how she got on the moon. And then sure enough, you see her floating in space, heading towards the moon.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's their story for how she got sent to the moon. You guys did that. Wow. So that having been said, like, the callback... Oh, and the biggest thing, which of course they let people know about, were, yes, there are 2 original Ranger cameos there at the very end of the movie when all of Angel Grove is looking up at the Megazord in awe, like, oh, this thing saved us. And, no point in saying who it's not. It's Amy Jo Johnson and Jason David Frank, who were originally the Pink and Green Ranger, respectively.
Right.
The funny part about it is, for as much as, for any of you know about Jason David Frank, how much he loves social media, this is very telling, at least to me, that in the moment there, when they're looking up at the Megazord in awe, and, the audience has a reason to clap, like, hey, some original Rangers, the first thing Jason David Frank does after looking up at the Megazord, he starts trying to Instagram it. And if that isn't telling of who he is as the person he is now, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's his life in a nutshell. His morphin life.
Yeah, you had to say it.
Oh, man. Oh, that guy. I can't, guys. I just can't with that guy.
So, the ending of the movie does very much give sequel bait. You see Rita going towards the moon. They blatantly say, because most of the Rangers are in detention for whatever reason. I don't know why they stay in detention. Like, when I was a kid, you were in detention for a little bit and then you got done with it.
No, what that is is suspension, if you ask me. You got suspended and got sent to school on Saturday.
Yeah,
there's
but that's...
in-school suspension, and then there's out-of-school suspension.
Yeah, and
this
then there's
is Saturday suspension. That's not detention.
Yeah, that's not detention. But they blatantly drop, oh, and we have a new kid in class today, Tommy Oliver. Tommy, and you see a green jacket there, which I think had a dragon on it already. Like, oh my god. Like, I get it. We know what's going to happen. Mind you, the Rangers have had one fight, and all of Angel Grove has only ever seen the Zords, the Megazord, and Jason, because Jason's the only one who gets out of his Zord and fights the putties.
So then why does that newspaper article have a picture of Trini, Josh?
I don't know. She never got out of her Zord. So
if the next movie does in fact feature Tommy Oliver, it's going to be entirely about him, because he got a 6-episode arc in the original series.
If they do
all about him before he ever actually became a member of the team.
If they do it right, then they can potentially get it to work. You know, having a whole movie based around that. That having been said, they did do a fair enough job of making an average audience want to go see it. As a fan, I will begrudgingly keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I got my money's worth going into this.
Not your money's worth for the Power Rangers, part
portion.
Of this movie.
Now, the thing about it is, like they say throughout the trailers, these are not good people. They're not good people at all. And eventually they at least form a kinship with one another.
Which, good for them. I believed them.
You know, good that they found each other. That's fine. But beyond that, yeah, it does feel like mood whiplash, like you were saying, you're watching two different movies. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the inverse of what I feel Kamen Rider the Next was, where you had this horror movie and a tokusatsu movie, and the horror movie takes up most of the movie, and it's not very good, and then you got the tokusatsu portion, which is really good and why you showed up. This is the inverse of that, where the tokusatsu portion is the part you came to see, but it sucks, and the other part, which is this teen drama, is actually entertaining.
Right, exactly.
And, I mean, it's not like I didn't think that's what they were gonna do. Like, I figured as much, but, I mean, good on them for telling that part of the story well.
Yeah, so, I hope if they do continue to make these films that... I don't want them to stop doing that portion well. I just want them to get to the Power Rangers part some more.
In addition to that, since we're talking about Tommy and we're talking about, you know, the teen drama portion, it's worth noting that there's 2 scenes that are visible in some commercials that were cut from the movie.
Training on top of a train?
Yeah, whoever was in a hoodie on top of a train... Oh, okay, so 3 then. Whoever was in a hoodie on a train, that got cut. There's a scene with Zac testing out his powers, jumping over his house, that got cut. He mentions that he did it, but they never show it on screen.
And making out between...
Kimberly and Jason, which I'm glad they cut, because you can see the scene where it was gonna happen, but then they cut it, and then it was like, oh, thank God, because that would have been really awkward right there, where it was going to happen. That having been said, that's about the gist of the movie.
Right.
Krispy Kreme, the amount of times...
I used to like you, Krispy Kreme.
No,
I
honestly,
really did.
it's a...
Every time, and they kept saying the name out loud. Over and over again, and I just got angrier and angrier
because,
every
like, people,
time.
I call it now, people will start having a drinking game as soon as this either gets leaked on the net or the Blu-ray or DVD comes out. You'll start having a drinking game for every time the Rangers or any character in the movie says the words Krispy Kreme.
Or you see the
logo or a donut there. Like, they pushed it so hard. Like, I don't think we outright said it, but we'll say it now. The Zoc Crystal is buried under the Krispy Kreme in downtown Angel Grove.
That's how plot relevant.
That's how plot relevant it is.
And Rita has to eat in fact, I saw it online, actually, a couple of weeks ago, her eating a donut, and I thought they just filmed it for a Krispy Kreme commercial.
Yeah.
They didn't. That's part of the movie.
That's part of the movie.
They fooled me. I really thought it was just a commercial, and it's not. It's actually in the movie.
It's actually there. So, I mean, good for them getting that kind of marketing out there, but, it was really like shove it down your throat, go eat a donut after this movie, which felt very off-putting at this point, you know, having sat through that for so long. That having been said for everything, like we kind of said in the other video, you've probably already made up your mind about what you think about this movie going into it. If you enjoyed it, if you're watching this and you enjoyed it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I admit there were things that I enjoyed about it.
I enjoyed the majority of the movie, just not as a Power Rangers movie, and the Power Rangers movie I wanted to see wasn't there, and so I did not enjoy the Power Rangers part of the Power Rangers movie, and that is the part that makes me disappointed.
Because, like so many other things, they showed me the Power Ranger portion of the Power Rangers movie in the commercials. And somebody needs to do something about that where you're not giving away so much. Like, there was nothing left for me to see going into it.
That was all that they could show to prove that they had Power Rangers in this Power Rangers movie, and they blew their whole load in that.
Because here's the other thing about rationalizing, the pageantry and things like that. For the bulk of the movie, the Rangers have a problem where they can't get it together internally to transform into morphing. So what I thought they were going to do is, like, as kind of an in-between, Zordon was going to say, look, I realize you guys are having trouble transforming. Here, use these, and then present the morphers to them. Like, oh, okay, that's the workaround. But they never did that.
Yeah.
So, it's like, you had an opportunity there that really wasn't that hard, but you missed it completely.
Right.
And now it feels cheap.
I agree.
So, yeah, I was entertained, but I don't think as a Power Rangers fan I got my money's worth.
Yeah, I was entertained, but not by the Power Rangers.
Right.
So,
so if you're fine with some of the pandering, and which you kind of should expect going into it, then you're probably okay with the movie. We'll see after this weekend how well it does, and if they're going to go ahead and greenlight a sequel there from Lionsgate.
I bet they will. I bet it happens.
We'll see. But really, like most other movies we talk about, the second week will be the telling thing, how far the receipts drop from week 1 to week 2. Will it? Who knows? By how much? We can't tell that right now. But for what it's worth, I give credit to where credit is due, but it's not like I'm going to tell you guys about a movie I didn't see.
Exactly. I agree with that.
So I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, that's about it. So thank you guys for having watched, and I hope you will also tell us about your own experiences with the movie once you guys get the chance to see it yourselves. If you agreed with us, if you don't agree with us, that's totally fine too. I would like to hear what it is that you think and where you think perhaps maybe we need to stop and think a little bit more. I would absolutely be willing to listen to you guys tell us more about that.
Yes.
So, thank you very much. Looking forward to doing another one of these sometime in the near future.
All right, guys. Take care.
Maybe Ghost in the Shell?
Maybe Ghost in the Shell. We'll see you guys next week and see how that goes.
All right. Thanks, everybody.